My wife slept with my boss to save our family. Before you listen to this crazy story, consider subscribing to never miss even more stories like these. I slept with your boss. She said out of the blue, to save our family. I froze mid-sip of coffee, the mug hovering in front of my face. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. But the look on her face, guilty, defiant, and somehow justified, told me I hadn't. My stomach dropped like a stone. What? I finally managed to say, my voice cracking. I set the mug down, my hands shaking so badly, I almost spilled it. My wife, Sarah, stood across the kitchen island, her arms crossed like she was bracing for a fight. You heard me. I slept with Daniel. And before you freak out, just listen. I did it for us. For the kids. For you. I stared at her, my brain short-circuiting. Daniel. My boss. The guy who'd been riding my ass for months, threatening to fire me if I didn't step up. The guy who'd been making my life a living hell. And now this. You slept with him. I repeated, my voice rising. To save our family? What the hell does that even mean? She sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. Mark, you know how bad things have been. We're drowning in debt. The mortgage is overdue. The kids' tuition is coming up. And you've been one bad review away from getting fired for months. Daniel's been looking for any excuse to let you go, and I couldn't just sit back and watch it happen. So I did what I had to do. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What you had to do. Are you serious right now? You slept with my boss, and you're acting like it was some noble sacrifice. She flinched but didn't back down. It was a sacrifice. Do you think I wanted to do it? Do you think I enjoyed it? I hated every second of it. But I didn't see any other way. If you lose your job, we lose everything. The house, the cars, the kids' future, it's all gone. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife, the woman I'd been married to for 12 years, the mother of my kids, had cheated on me with my boss. And she was acting like she deserved a medal for it. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice low and shaking. Instead of talking to me, instead of us figuring this out together, you decided the best solution was to sleep with Daniel? To cheat on me? To betray me in the worst possible way? She looked away, her jaw tightening. I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it to protect us. To protect our family. You think I wanted this? You think I'm proud of it? I did it because I love you. Because I love our family. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You love me? You love our family? Then why the hell didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you tell me how bad things were? Why didn't you give me a chance to fix it? She didn't answer. She just stood there, her arms still crossed, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and defiance. And in that moment, I realized something. She didn't regret it. Not really. She thought she'd done the right thing. And that made it even worse. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that my life had just been blown apart, and I had no idea how to put it back together. I spent the next few days in a daze. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even look at Sarah without feeling like I was going to throw up. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Daniel, and it made me want to punch something. I didn't go to work. I couldn't face Daniel, not after what Sarah had told me. Instead, I called in sick and spent my days driving around aimlessly trying to clear my head. But no matter how far I drove, I couldn't escape the mess my life had become. Sarah tried to talk to me, but I shut her down every time. I wasn't ready to hear her excuses. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Hell, I wasn't even sure I could forgive her. The kids noticed something was wrong, of course. They kept asking why I was so quiet, why I wasn't eating, why I wasn't going to work. I didn't know what to tell them. How do you explain to your kids that their mom cheated on you with your boss? How do you explain that your family might be falling apart? I didn't have the answers. All I had was anger. Anger at Sarah, anger at Daniel, anger at myself for not seeing this coming. I felt like a failure. Like I'd let my family down. Like I wasn't good enough. And then one night I snapped. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the TV but not really watching it when Sarah walked in. She sat down next to me, her hands clasped in her lap, and took a deep breath. Mark, we need to talk, she said quietly. I didn't look at her. What's there to talk about? You slept with my boss. You betrayed me. End of story. She flinched but didn't back down. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can't just ignore this. We have to figure out how to move forward. For the kids. For us. I turned to her, my anger boiling over. Move forward. Are you kidding me? You think we can just move on from this? You think I can just forget that you slept with Daniel? I don't expect you to forget, she said, her voice trembling. But I'm asking you to try to understand. I did what I thought I had to do to protect our family. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't see any other way. I stared at her, my hands clenched into fists. You didn't see any other way? How about talking to me? How about trusting me to figure it out? How about not sleeping with my boss? She didn't answer. She just sat there, her eyes filled with tears, and in that moment I realized something. She wasn't going to take responsibility for what she'd done. She was going to keep justifying it, keep acting like she was the hero in this messed up story. And I couldn't deal with that. Not anymore. I stood up and walked out of the room, my mind made up. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay in this marriage. Not after what she'd done. I went back to work the next day, but it wasn't easy. Walking into that office, knowing what Daniel had done, knowing what Sarah had done, felt like stepping into a war zone. Every time I saw him, I had to fight the urge to punch him in the face. But I didn't. I kept my head down, did my job, and tried to act like everything was normal. It wasn't, of course. How could it be? But I didn't have a choice. I needed this job. I needed the money. And as much as I hated to admit it, I needed to prove to myself that I could handle this. That I wasn't going to let Daniel or Sarah destroy me. It wasn't easy. Every day was a struggle. Every meeting, every email, every conversation felt like a battle. But I kept going. I had to. And then one day, Daniel called me into his office. I knew it was coming. I'd been waiting for it, dreading it, ever since Sarah had dropped her bombshell. But when it finally happened, I wasn't ready. "Mark, have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I sat down, my heart pounding. I didn't say anything. I just waited, my hands clenched into fists under the table. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "I've been hearing some interesting things lately. About you. About your wife." I felt my stomach drop. "What are you talking about?" He smiled, a cold, calculating smile that made my skin crawl. "Let's just say I've been made aware of some complications in your personal life. And I have to say, it's concerning. As your boss, I need to know that you're focused. That you're committed to this company. And right now, I'm not sure that's the case." I stared at him, my anger boiling over. "Are you threatening me?" He shrugged. "I'm just saying, Mark, that if your personal life is affecting your work, we might need to reevaluate your position here. And I'd hate to see that happen. You're a valuable member of the team. But I have to do what's best for the company." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of him, exactly what I thought of his company. But I didn't. I just sat there, my hands clenched into fists, and nodded. "I understand," I said through gritted teeth. He smiled again like he'd won. "Good. I'm glad we're on the same page." I stood up and walked out of his office, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to fix this. All I knew was that I couldn't let him win. I couldn't let him destroy me. And then, as I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen, an idea started to form. It was risky. It was crazy. But it just might work. I spent the next few weeks working like a man possessed. I stayed late, came in early, and poured everything I had into my job. I wasn't just trying to prove myself to Daniel, I was trying to prove myself to me. Every morning, I'd wake up with a knot in my stomach, dreading the day ahead, but I'd force myself to get up, get dressed, and go to work. I couldn't let Daniel win. I couldn't let Sarah's betrayal define me. The first week was the hardest. Every time I saw Daniel in the hallway, I had to fight the urge to confront him. I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But I didn't. I kept my head down, focused on my work, and bided my time. And then one day I got my chance. I'd been working on a big project, a new client pitch that could bring in millions for the company. It was a long shot, but I'd poured everything I had into it. I'd spent nights researching, weekends brainstorming, and early mornings fine-tuning the presentation. And when the day finally came to present it to the higher-ups, I was ready. I walked into the boardroom, my heart pounding, and set up my laptop. The room was filled with the company's top executives, including Daniel. He was sitting at the head of the table, his arms crossed, looking smug as usual. But I didn't let him intimidate me. I took a deep breath, clicked through my slides, and started my pitch. For the next hour, I laid out my vision for the project. I talked about the client's needs, the market trends, and the innovative solutions we could offer. I answered every question, addressed every concern, and by the end of the meeting, I could see the excitement in their eyes. "This is impressive, Mark," one of the executives said, nodding. "Really impressive. I think we've got something here." I felt a surge of pride, but I didn't let it show. I just nodded and thanked them for their time. As I packed up my laptop and headed for the door, I caught Daniel's eye. He was glaring at me, his jaw clenched, and I knew I'd gotten under his skin. But I wasn't done. Not yet. A few days later, I got a call from the CEO's office. They wanted to meet with me. Just me. No Daniel. I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't going to waste the opportunity. When I walked into the CEO's office, I was nervous, but I tried not to show it. The CEO, a man named Richard, gestured for me to sit down. "Mark, I'll get straight to the point," he said, leaning forward. "We've been impressed with your work lately. Very impressed. And we think you've got what it takes to take on a bigger role in the company." I felt my heart skip a beat. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." He nodded. we're thinking of promoting you to senior project manager. It's a big step up, but we think you're ready. What do you say? I didn't hesitate. I say yes. Absolutely. He smiled. Good. We'll make it official next week. Congratulations, Mark. I left his office feeling like I was walking on air. A promotion. A real, honest-to-God promotion. And not just any promotion, a promotion that would put me above Daniel. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The next day, I called a meeting with the higher-ups, the same group I'd pitched to before. But this time, I wasn't there to present a project. I was there to present a case against Daniel. I laid it all out. His incompetence, his favoritism, his toxic management style. I didn't hold back. And by the end of the meeting, they were nodding along, their expressions grim. We'll look into this, Richard said, his voice serious. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, Mark. A week later, Daniel was demoted. He was still with the company, but he was no longer my boss. And I was promoted to senior project manager with a raise and a corner office to match. It wasn't perfect. It didn't fix everything. But it was a start. As for Sarah, well, that's a different story. We're still figuring things out. I moved into the guest room, and we've been living like roommates ever since. We've talked a lot, but I'm not ready to forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But one thing's for sure, I'm not the same man I was before. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. And I'm not going to let anyone, not her, not Daniel, not anyone, define me ever again. If you enjoyed this story, it will mean the world if you hit that subscribe button, as it's the best inspiration for me to continue making videos.